Welcome to Inventing with Adrian. I am Adrian, artificer. Just after doing this whole video, realizing a few of these buttons need to be hit properly, but otherwise this isn't going to do any good. Anyway, I welcome you back. Happy you're here. We're going to talk about a lot of the projects I've invented in the past and how they came to be. And I want to start off by thanking my friend Brian Pearson for coming by this morning shortly after 7. Brian is the author of the book The Warrior Inside, and he's a John Maxwell graduate and coaching leaders in leadership training. And we both have a passion for helping people achieve their dreams and making the best of themselves, and there's a lot of synergy in that. So we had a great discussion today about how to motivate y'all to, in fact, do something and to better your life. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, are so many of the people that approached me because they felt a need to do something, or they found a need for something to be done, a business opportunity, maybe an epiphany. So I'll share with you today some of those stories of the multiple things that I've in fact created. New camera today, new lights, so hopefully a clear image. I don't know if I can make it, if I'll be much sharper, but the image is certainly clear. I had in our first meeting discussed what I've done for so many years, coaching inventors 3 to 5 every Thursday for free for an hour to see where they were at, where their idea, where they wanted to go with it, and how they might get there. And so out of 1,500 or more inventors, I'm happy to say that I actually discouraged over 1,200 to not take another step further. That in fact their idea was already patented or was already on the market. Some simple homework things that if they'd done, but still I didn't want to discourage them. In fact, I left them encouraged that they in fact had a good idea. It had been developed or patented. And so that was proof that they were creative minds and that they should continue to develop things. Of the remaining 300, I actually took the next step to make something demonstrable for them. That is, look at their idea and figure out a solution and make something working. Some of them I took it even further than that to help them launch their business and so on. So that's been the life I've had as an artificer, which is a professional inventor for hire. So yeah, the first meeting I described how people come in my office. We talk about if they've done the patent search work, if they've done any market search work, and if it's looking like there's nothing else there, to quickly file something, a provisional, so you can talk further about your idea. The laws changed, so now first to file is the way to go, so you need to protect yourself. The steps after that are doing just that, market researching with whatever ways you can, describe your idea to see if it's desired, and then a SWOT analysis of yourself and the product idea, and this is where I suggested using the new product evaluation matrix test, which are 10 questions that in the second video I went over thoroughly to describe 10 areas that you should look at to grade your idea, to be objective. We fall in love with our ideas, so this was a way to score your idea. Last meeting I started talking about some different ideas. My earlier starts with thin film technologies and plasma physics and the high technology things that were my earlier part of my career, and got into some more consumer electronics things, and I described one of the first products that we used to launch our business, A Squared, was the car alarm. A gentleman who was selling high-end stereo systems and alarms in LA approached me, wanted to stay above the crowd, and asked me to invent a car alarm that would lock your door and flash your lights with remote control. So our first product was the Micro 3 car alarm system. Here it is. That I designed and married it to a linear garage door receiver. And in fact, you lock your door, flash your light. When you hit the button, it would lock your door and flash your lights. And had alarm if somebody was trying to enter it. Built 500. And no, we didn't patent it. And a few months later, a gentleman came by with a box, showed me some Korean specialty products, and it was a knockoff. It was my first experience with that. And that didn't really faze me until even later, a year or two later, it was knocked off again and became a major car alarm on the market, which has made millions since. So like an early lesson on car alarms. I was talking about these other projects, so let me just go down the list and see what I talked about. We talked about the rug bug, predecessor to the Roomba, ahead of its time. the car alarms, some consumer idea, cassette tape, dispenses cassette tapes. Made flashing shoes with EL lights, electroluminescence that would flash. Boat alarm covers, Christmas light flashers. One of our very first successes was the flow meter for Amtech meter. Chuck Alden was in the business of selling water to utility companies and districts and huge companies like Motorola that need to measure how much water. So he sold flow meters. This is a flow meter. Flow meter, water goes in, turns a wheel, and there's a magnet on the top of this. And as that wheel turns, it's turning the magnet, and the transmitter goes on top of that. And the transmitter, when he first was working, was a series of gears and systems. He had to keep inventory of all these gears, and for every pulse per whatever increment they needed, he would send them these with custom gears, and they were only so accurate. He approached me, my job, I looked at the problem and I created, and this is how I used to breadboard circuits, a circuit that had a optical wheel that had far much greater resolution. So when this little wheel spun, it spun an optic wheel inside here that's hard to see, and then that made pulses. That is, by adjusting the little switches out here, you can adjust it for whatever pulse you want. What good is that? Well, you then create controller boards. And then a number of controller boards will go into a control box. And so each one of these boards would talk to a few of those transmitters, and with relays it would send circuits. And this is for automatic batch flow controls for mixing concrete, mixing foods, mixing all kinds of things when it comes to fluids and batches. So that project helped launch our business, and we made thousands and thousands of those and helped him build a factory next to us where we built his test equipment for him, and he would calibrate and send those out. And later on, those brass housings were replaced with plastic, and those were a flow meter transmitter. Going down the line, there's motion detectors with RF transmitters, smoke detectors, line transmitters. I mentioned a porator. And it's a DNA sampling system that helped Invitrogen launch and become a multi-billion-dollar company. And now that we have this little thing I can show you, might have seen it on the website. It's that little box there that as you lift this little lid, you would put in a test tube that had electrodes in it, and it would charge up and it would zap and it would explode the cells, a process called electroporation. This is that little electrode, that little test tube electrode. So this was filled with all kinds of things you don't want to play with chemically, and then that was dropped in there, and it would create this process. That was used in universities all over the country for genetic research work, and it helped Invitrogen. It was a razor blade model. They gave those actual devices away because every time somebody would put their cells into this little thing and sample it, they would send it back to Invitrogen, and it was $90 a test. So quickly raised, and they became a billion-dollar company in San Diego. Very happy, at least we were able to build them for them to begin with, as we were hired to. Next thing, a silver recovery system. I mentioned this last time. The fellow found out there was a regulation about dropping heavy ions, and so people that were creating X-ray film were being double billed because they were dropping silver down the drain. I created a power supply that recovered it very accurately. It was the first thing I actually got a patent on, and it led to, we built thousands of those systems, maybe not thousands, hundreds I would say, that were sold, and people would recover their silver and turn in slags of pure silver. Before the whole industry became digitized. Quite a great run for that. Ovulometer, teletext decoder, automatic drilling machine. I love this story. It was one of my first robots, aside from the vacuum cleaner. This gentleman's problem, he was contracted by the government to help them make laser sights for rifles. And it consisted of a black anodized aluminum tube that had a bunch of electronics in it that were mounted with 6 screws on both ends, and his job was to make the screw holes on both ends perfect. And so he had some kludgy tooling and people with a drill press, and could only do them so fast. The machine I designed for him had 2 racks that held tubes, automatically fed into this little fixture that clamped 2 cones on the end, would drill the holes with pneumatic drills that automatically drilled, came up, and then a stepper motor would turn it exactly 60 degrees and drill the next 5 holes, and then release the tube. The next tube would drop down. It was a sequence automatic drilling machine that we had the one-time NRE to design, form, and build, and then in fact he went on to, I don't know how many zillions of tubes he was paid per piece to manufacture for the government. So that was a drilling machine. Next one was a fun one. Bob Root was into hydraulics, tractors and trailers and forks, and so he understood the principles. He actually, his business was making the tubes and hoses for hydraulic fixtures. He had realized there was a problem that was needed to be addressed with soil sampling systems. People needed soil sampling at the time. There was a way to do it. He had this envision for a machine that he could actually rent to people, that he could take out and set up, run off a battery, and do a precise soil sampling. And he did, in fact, contract me. I worked with him to develop. Here's a circuit board. And again, no, I don't have a degree in electronics. This is all from Sims, Radio Shack books and ways to learn to use circuits and inclusion and making them work. So here's a sequencer with LEDs and fuses that ran the whole process of controlling all the valves on the motors to lift this crane up, lift this weight up, drop it controllably, and repeat the process. So we built probably about 300 of these altogether, all of which became machines that he would in fact rent out, and that was his business model. So it was a process controller for soil sampling. Yeah, so getting an idea of the different varieties of things and reasons people approach me to develop these things, and as an inventor, as a hired inventor, what we did for him there. Filters in trucks, when they get a hole in them, they can't be repaired, they're thrown away. We developed a system to optically inspect them using infrared light. The transmitters, gas sampling valve, vision reactor. It was actually for a baseball team. They wanted to test people. It was a piezo panel that we would have a light up, and when you touch the panel, it would measure your reaction time and your visual acuity. And so you'd stand there and you'd play this game, and it was used as a tester for visual acuity and reaction. Postcard video system. Just that. It was a video system. It was a kiosk. You would sit in, you put your money in, and it would put you in a picture that you could select the background. It was the first of its kind for kiosks. All right, next year, a flashing button for Ross Perot. Was approached for him for that. Ballast for phototrons. Phototrons is a plant growth chamber, and I was approached to design the lighting systems for these plant growth chambers. The industry was growing. This, what's next here? Test fixture for transformers, capper modifiers for capping bottles, a computer control for a linear accelerator. IRT Corporation actually built a linear accelerator in Mira Mesa, and they used it to artificially age gems. It's a business in and of itself. And to control a linear accelerator, you need a very computer-controlled and accurate way of firing off magnets and coils. And the high-energy particle physicist showed me his design, which we manufactured and it's helped install for a linear accelerator in Mira Mesa. Button after that, okay, here's a fun one. It was a hot-cold whipped drink mixer. This was one of the first of its kind cappuccino machines. The gentleman himself manufactured the drink, the concentrate, but he needed a dispenser system. So the dispenser system held refrigerated milk. Air pumps pressurized it. They flowed through valves. They mixed. They would be dispensed. I also had a heater system to create the foam, and all of this was in a stainless steel machine that we built and made from scratch for him to get the contract to go into the cappuccino machine business. And so it was a proof of concept, a working model, very nicely well made in stainless steel, and all steamed and foamed, made a very delicious drink. A waiter table paging system. Gosh, it worked so good, and it never went into production. Just that, you want to page your waiter to come to your table? Sounds obvious, right? Well, he didn't get it to market. He actually got distracted by something that was even bigger for him in his life. I was happy to say it wasn't anything negative. An antenna spiral oscillator. Okay, almost an alchemist. This fellow stumbled across this process that he approached me to help develop an oscillator to create an RF frequency. It reduces the surface tension of water. It makes water more permeable in the cells. We would cut flowers, and the treated flowers would last longer. It changed the flavor of cheese, wine. It was an amazing process. We built the working model. He then commercialized it to a company called Sea Silver, and they made a nutritional drink with sea ingredients. And the idea was if the water was lower surface tension, it would permeate in cells better, which in fact it does. They took the name Silver away because the FDA doesn't agree with that, but it's still sold as Sea Aloe, and became distributor number 0008 because of my work on that process. The auto find it beeper, you could whistle and your keys would beep back. Two-player sword game buzzer. This fellow's passion was fencing, and you would go in a room and wear a cable, and then the beeper would beep on the wall if you hit somebody with your sword, and he wanted a little less restrictive device. So I created a battery-powered model of this as a game that could be turned into a, you got me buzzer that he took to market. Pithead metal detector. This is one of the very, very few stories, actually only two, that I can say actually did not work, technically. It's only to a certain extent. The problem is, when they sew heads into dolls, Mattel in Mexico, a lot of times the needles break. When the needle breaks, it becomes a liability, and somebody finds it when they shouldn't have. My product that I was trying to create was a chamber, and the head would fall through it, and metal detectors would detect if there's any metal present and reject the head instantly if there was such. And it worked up into a certain size of a broken needle, but in fact the needles that were breaking were even smaller than that in some cases, so it didn't actually go onto the production floor. I gave them their money back, but I still listed it as an attempt. It was a product here to create this pinhead metal detector. Catch float systems are for pumping systems. Automatic toilet control. We waste so much water. This fellow realized that was a need and envisioned a toilet basically with a sink disposer system in it to help use only a pint of water, but needed a sequencer, electronic sequencer, that would run it from the switch to the motors and timing and all that, and we developed that, which he used then to be his demonstrable proof of concept that he licensed to a Japanese company that put it in production. A propane detonator. The Marines like things that go boom. They like their refugees, their recruits, to learn what that experience is like before they go into real action. And so I developed this remote-controlled propane detonator that, as the troops are going through their motions, they get the reactions of the propane detonator. All right, next year. Oh, this was a fun one. Electronic baseball display and game. The fellow had developed a game that was basically a baseball on a cord, and you used a bat that had a notch in it, and if you swung properly and aligned it properly, the bat would go right over the cable and hit the ball. Wham! So you got really accurate. And he approached me if we could make an electronics game out of it, which I did. We put a panel at the end with a piezo strip, and it could measure this intensity of the impact, and we created an electronic game that, depending on the impact, it was a single, double, triple, home run. It was a whole baseball game you play with two players, and we made a couple proof of concepts of that, and they worked fantastic. I forgot how we went out to market it, but he did put that on an as-seen on TV ad for a while. Video modem. I helped Sony develop one of their first web video cameras. Microwave motion car controls. eSmart system. This was an interesting problem and story. It's General Atomics landed a contract to build a sensor system to measure hazardous waste sites. I forget what they call these huge pollution fields that are enormous toxic waste sites, and their job was to measure 8 different physical properties: temperature and humidity and the alkaline and different properties of the soil. So we built a network with 8 different types of sensors, and I think there was 80,000 sensors in this huge field, all with 2 wires connecting them. It was an enormous contract for us, and these circuit boards were very state-of-the-art. There were 16 layers using microprocessors and the latest sensor technologies, and it worked very well. It was a very, very big deliverable and project for us. So when you get into, we're getting into now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-digit projects that are wonderful for development companies such as our own. Okay, baseball and eSmart systems, and gosh, I get to go to the next page already. All right, we're past 1 of the 3 pages I have of projects to talk about. And seriously, there's lists and more lists and more lists. And so I'm not going to go through every single one. As you can see, I'm already trying to speed through them because some are more significant and interesting stories than others, obviously, here. So let's see if I can finish up this year at least. The next project on here, the same Bob Roop that hired me to design his soil sampling system. I love the fact that I could develop things for him, and I developed this water feeder, the auto feeder timer for his horses. It was a 50-gallon drum that, using lawn timers and a gear motor and a gear off a motorcycle, would turn and dispense twice a day a section of a bale of hay for his horses. And he had beautiful horses out on his stables, so it was very important to him. We built a couple of them. Baby Thinking Over Electronics. This came to me, the gentleman that came to me and his lovely wife, Richard Germain and Mary Germain. Richard was literally a rocket scientist in San Diego who had just been laid off, and at the time his daughter was going through home ec class in high school, and his daughter challenged him, saying, "Dad, why are they making me carry around some eggs to pretend it's a baby? Can't we think of something better?" And he thought, yeah, we should be able to make an infant simulator, and in fact approached me with that idea and concept. And we took it from there and developed prototypes and models, and developed a circuit that had a speech synthesizer on here and shock detector, and a little reed switch, so you had to show it a magnet. You had to pretend you were feeding it. And we ramped this up to 350 units a day. It was a great success. It became Fortune magazine's product of the year, mid-90s. Newt Gingrich held it on the floor. And it's the infant simulator doll that, there we go, Baby Think It Over. Yeah, the whole factory next door to our main plant, 18 assemblers working on this, and 350 a week. The company finally was licensed off to another company called Reality Works, and then they decided they wanted to save some money, and they decided to go to China. And it was a disaster and a half. The molds were garbage, the products were garbage. They ended up closing the whole plant, going and starting up a whole nother facility. A loss of over 6 months, nearly a year. But it got back on its feet, and it's still sold today. It's a great way to have kids realize the realities of a kid waking up in the middle of the night and crying and need to be cared for. So it was a non-political answer to the teenage pregnancy problem. And a great success for us, and we were very proud to get that product to market and make it the success it help it become the success it was. RF controlled shopping cart brakes. Yeah, the problem was these shopping carts, when they roll out in the streets, hit cars, they get dented, and people sue the stores, and your food prices go up. It's an actual thing. The fellow who found this out realized the answer was to put a cable of some sort, bury a signal around the parking lot, and make a wheel lock to stop those carts from rolling off. He, in fact, went so far as to patent it with basically that much of an explanation, but didn't really have the wherewithals to design a circuit to do it. So he approached me and our company, E Squared. And we went forth and in fact did develop the circuitry and a wheel, and the wheel had a little gear motor, and it had this receiver that when it would detect a signal would activate the brakes, and then with another signal that only certain people had could release the brake. I put the oscillator on that cable that he had buried around a Safeway in Glendale, and it was the first system of its kind that would lock a shopping cart wheel when it crossed the perimeter. So it technically worked very well. He used it to demonstrate it and license it off and got a huge upfront payment for it, and then disappeared and basically ruined his own life, ruined ours, because he bounced the checks even that he had paid. The only great reward was at the end. The person that bought the rights to it was the person who owned lace guitar sensors, and he gave me a set of custom wound lace Fender pickup sensors for my guitar. Anyways, a system for locking shopping cart brakes was asked for me to develop, and I did such. Power supplies, pressure filter sensors for sensing if air filters are clogged. I was approached to develop. Next year, a prison cell communicator. You like to talk to prisoners, we help that. Fan speed control, smart battery for laptops. The trick here was that the batteries had smarts in there to measure their condition and then send that to the main computer, which is why you have those little fuel gauges on your computer to show your battery level. Well, the aftermarket batteries were coming out, and this gentleman wanted to get in that market and had the access to the lithium cells but didn't have the technology for the interface circuit, and we were hired, and it was going to be extraordinarily expensive to partner with Motorola, so we actually what's called bit banged the communication stream, and actually we read every single bit that was going back and forth from the battery to the computer and figured a way to mirror it and create a circuit that would enable the same function for this company to make aftermarket smart batteries for laptops. Next thing was a fire truck intercom system. Fire chiefs, I've actually been approached by a few different professions, firemen as well, for different communication needs. The truck intercom was one indeed. Okay, snooze alert for truckers. Truckers dotting off. You know what the worst fear is, that they're going to dot off and have an accident. So we put a sensor right under their hat, and as soon as they hit a certain level, beep, beep, beep. Next year, printer suitcases, RF controlled lights, conveyor systems, valve controllers, rocket controls for an amateur rocketeer. He wanted to be able to do video, and we built some embedded control circuits for amateur Estes rockets. Data logger for trucks. Are there bumps? Is there excessive heat? We built data loggers for trucks to sense how their cargo was being tracked and taken care of. Microwave things, plotters, cable TV systems. Next year on. More industrial controls, a 4-channel meter, a data logger with a handheld, a lithium-ion battery charger, golf putt trainer. So many golf enthusiasts, you know, if the angle of your putter is a little bit off, your ball's not going the right direction. So we developed a system that had 2 little photosensors, and the idea is your putter has to cross both sensors at the exact same time, otherwise it's going to go left or right. And so we built this, and the gentleman I was working for built a little thermoform plastic case. It was a golf putt trainer device, and he put them on the market and did quite well with that. So that was a little golf putt trainer. EOG bone growth stimulator. EOG is electroosteogenesis. At certain frequencies, you can beat the osteoblast osteoclast. There's a process that your bones actually grow and absorb themselves, and it's a race between the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts, and at certain frequencies you can change that balance and improve the bone growth. That's embedded into most bone growth stimulators for broken legs and bones. I was involved with some of the development of some of that work and tried to optimize it. Actually use that technology for some other things that are coming up later I'll talk to you about. Spinal treatment system. This is an array of electrodes that goes in your spinal column and processes paresthesia by creating a little signal right by the nerve and branch that goes into your spinal column. You can deaden the pain that's coming from whatever the region is, and it's an amazing treatment for people that have facing excruciating chronic pains. It was a development work that I did for that. Pet toy. Pets like hearing things like heartbeats, and we put a heartbeat sounding device in a thing, and pets just tore them up. Well, things that are torn up right away don't last long on the market. So, chronic pain relief system. Yeah, I think I got a picture of that one too. That's this device. I'm putting my thumb, my finger. Here it is. That's it's a TENS device, a transcutaneous electronic nerve stimulation, deadens pain. I randomized the signal because the body acclimates to repetitive signals, and so this wasn't a way to stop the body from acclimating, and so it stayed useful. They actually took it from that size and made it a smaller device. Unfortunately, they didn't want to use us to manufacture it, and they went with a firm that underbid us, but the end result was over 2,000 devices they had to scrap because there was some major assembly errors and quality control issues, and that discouraged them, unfortunately. Backup alarm. You know, I saw somebody today saying, "Hey, I was the one that invented backup alarms with ultrasonics," and I'm thinking, I did it 7 years before you for UPS that hired us to do just that, using ultrasonic sensors for backups. Water monitor, another pain suppressor, another meter, a solar cell tester, robotics for thin film depositions, airbag deployment systems. I'm going to end up on this one. The last two on this list. By the way, this list is on that link I gave you of archived page I have of projects, the first two of the 300. The HFS airbag deployment system. In Japan, they didn't have a runway long enough to land the space shuttle, so they wanted to land a space shuttle on airbags. And in fact, we developed this system with huge airbags, and the space shuttle would land on these, and then they would open and deflate. And you don't hear about the Japanese space program too much, but it was an airbag deployment system for the space shuttles. Well, I think I have rambled on for a bit now and talked to you about a variety of things that have been in my background. Still not even halfway through this list. It's to give you some idea of the way I've been approached by people of all sorts of different walks of life that have realized a problem and that needs a solution, and they might have found a way to market that solution but needed to actually invent that thing. So through this process, I've been named on over 17 issued patents, a lot of them for other people, some of them for my own, and I'll explain those projects as well as we go further along into this. I just wanted to give you another episode of Inventing with Adrian to hear again about the different variety of things that I've worked on in that time. In fact, delighted to talk to you to see where you're at with your idea, and if it is feasible, if we can move that forward, how that could be possibly done. My website is inventingwithadrian.com. The club that I've been running to help inventors now is the South Carolina InventorsForum.org. And once a month we invite speakers to come in and talk about their experiences and process in different aspects of inventing. I'm proud, as a matter of fact, that one of our speakers we've had 2 times now is Warren Tuttle, who's a famed, not inventor, but product developer, and helped with the open innovation community, and has for decades helped inventors, and is the president of the United Inventors Association, helped inventors find ways to display their products and get their products to market. He is in fact the author of his own book that's been released recently, Inventor Confidential, and I'm delighted he actually gave me a shout out, so I have to reply back that I'm delighted for you called an inventor advocate by Mr. Warren Tuttle. Anyway, this is a fantastic book that describes a lot of the ins and outs of the entire industry, from pitching the products and working with companies and getting those license agreements and how to approach them, and what kind of things you'll find out about being in the trade. Other than that, we have so many more things to discuss. And so I hope you'll tune in again next week. We'll go into this further, and until then, feel free to contact me in the comments section below. I'll be happy to answer your questions, and y'all have an inventive day. See you next week.